Welcome back to the channel. There's so much talk about Brexit these days and the delay and a deal or no deal. And to be honest, having worked in large mergers and acquisitions, business transformations, setting up businesses, companies, creating contracts with other companies worth millions and millions of pounds, one thing that I know, and I'm sure most of you who have been in any kind of negotiations know, that a bad contract is as good as no contract. Because once you start doing the transactions, a bad contract becomes a bit of a nightmare to deal with. And it's better not to have a contract and then slowly work your way through certain high-level agreements and refine it as you go along, especially in a situation like Brexit, where it's not just one simple, straightforward, trade deal. This is a whole raft of different types of contracts and negotiations that led to Britain leaving the EU, which means that we can't just let a bunch of bureaucrats and a bunch of politicians sit around a table for a few months and come up with a deal that will benefit us all in the long run. So I'm a Europhile. I like Europe. I like the unification. But after seeing how the bureaucrats and the politicians around the EU have behaved, it seems like it's the right thing to do for us to leave now. And I think we should leave with a no deal, because then we will look at individual sectors and there'll be specialists who will be involved in negotiating those deals. They will be done in piecemeal, step by step, rather than doing a blanket agreement that no one understands and causes us lots of issues in the long run. So that's my little opinion. One other thing that I keep saying and bringing this up is we have a very flawed political system, and giving power to the people gives the false illusion of democracy. Basically, you give people control of their lives and the big country who have no idea what they're doing. I mean, it's just like, giving a nuclear plant to the masses and say, go run it. They wouldn't know, they'll blow it up. There are experts out there in the world who should be designated and should have a license to practice politics. I'll make another video about this. I think I may have done in the past, where I talked about my view of the political system. I think democracy is a farce, and Brexit is a typical example where 51% or 52% of the population voted for something that they didn't really know what was going on. Their voting rights should be stripped if they didn't know what they were voting for. And now when it comes the time to accept the consequences, they're not even willing to do that. So the bottom line with Brexit is we should go ahead and deal with it as we go through. I mean, if you think about our economy and the British system, we're not a massive production country. We are a service country. We provide lots of services, which we have done for hundreds of years, and therefore we don't export a lot of stuff. We're big importers. If you compare the left, which is the East, and less capitalistic ecosystems, and then you go all the way to the West, which is America, the epitome of capitalism, it's very evident that there are massive differences in the way that people work, the societies, the cultures, their habits. We are right bang in the middle. We are a very consumer-based economy. We are big spenders, but we're also not crazy capitalists like the Americans. So we have German cars, French cars, we have all these electronics, the kitchen appliances, washing machines, dishwashers. Everything that you look around the house that you use comes from Europe. So if we stop importing those things, that will have a massive impact on the rest of the EU. Whether they accept it or not in this ego trip that the whole of the EU is on, they rely on us to buy their stuff. And if we stop buying it, it will damage their economy. Therefore, the trade agreements and the no deal scenario cannot continue When we have a no deal, we'll still have to come up with some kind of plans and agreements that will allow us to buy those things. We might start producing some of those, which will be good for the country here, but in the short term, we will have to either use what we have and not buy things for another 5 years, or import them somehow, which means they have to sell. If you think of it from their business point of view, German car industry, we buy the most cars out of any population in the whole of the EU. And people will say, oh, how did you come up with this? I drive everywhere, look around the roads. The quality of the cars, the latest models, they're everywhere in the UK, even in small towns and villages. If you go around the rest of Europe, they're still driving old bangers. I'm not saying they're poor. I'm just saying it's the way the British culture and economy is. We like buying things. We're a consumer economy. And same thing with electronics and cameras. I don't know. I just look around the house. Everything I own is German, Danish, Swedish, French, so Italian even. So there are very few things that I own that are British. Therefore, if I stop buying those things, those businesses will suffer. Germany, for example, is a country that people need to really go and explore. I love Germany. I love Germans. I have amazing friends in Germany. And I have nothing against the country, but the politicians over there have not invested in the German infrastructure for the last 20 years. If you go to small towns and small streets in even big cities, the roads, the footpaths, the bridges, everything is falling apart. They're in really bad state. The German government has been pumping a lot of money into the EU to have better control, to unify, and I don't know what their motives are, but whether they're good or bad, they haven't invested in their own country. The German economy at the moment is taking a downturn, so us not buying things from them is going to impact them. Also, area-wise, if you look at the per square kilometer, UK is the most densely populated country. We have about 75 million people living here. Whereas if you compare us to France, France is the biggest country per square mile in Europe, and France would need to take 50 million more people for them to be the same as the UK in the population density. Germany, Spain, Sweden, I think it's the third biggest country per square mile in the EU. Well, I say EU, perhaps Western Europe is what I should say, because recently a lot of other East European countries have joined, and I don't know their square kilometers, but they're not big buyers, they're not big spenders, they don't have much money, so we can discount them for now. The point I'm trying to make is that if Britain stops buying, the rest of the EU will suffer. Therefore, they are obliged to come up with some kind of trade agreements and deals. So we should stop panicking about this no deal scenario, because we're not going to suffer. And even if we suffer, it might be a little good for our economy and our people to wake the hell up, because there's so many people who are just absolutely lazy and don't do anything. Maybe they'll get some jobs for a change. Anyway, if you go back in history and look at other countries, I mean, not so long ago, about 50, 60 years ago in 1947, when we handed India back to the natives, it was split into India and Pakistan. What the two countries did in terms of their economy were completely different strategies and how they operated. So the Indians banned the import of all foreign goods. They forced their people to buy local stuff. They weren't allowed to import cars. They were driving those metal, horrible, ugly looking Marutis, and for many, many years, for decades, while Pakistan was importing things left, right and center. Look at the two countries today. One is economically very strong, has a massive production industry, are buying European businesses. The other one still struggling. So it is one of those things. Maybe if there's a no deal scenario, we should just ban imports of all things for 2 years or 5 years or whatever period, and force our people to either manufacture them here, recycle them, use what we have, and come up with stuff that we can make and make this country amazing. I mean, Great Britain was Great Britain and will always be. And it's not because of our empire, it's because of our culture and how we are and how we deal with things. We're a nation of very clever, very smart people who have transformed the world over centuries. We have invented, innovated, created things that others couldn't even possibly imagine. And yes, it sounds like I'm on an ego trip. I'm proud of my country. That's one thing I really moan about all the time, that if you say anything against the French, they'll chop your head off. If you say anything against the Germans, they'll walk away and they'll be angry. If you say anything against the Brits, they'll join you and then they'll laugh at themselves. We don't have anything to be embarrassed of, and I know we don't have anything to prove either, but maybe it's time for us to show the world that, we are very smart people and we have given the world a lot and we can change our own country and our own future. So my 2 cents on this, or 2 pence on this, is let's not worry so much about Brexit and let's carry on with our jobs and the businesses and how we run and operate, and maybe go for a no deal, because at the end of the day, a bad deal is worse than a no deal, because at least with a no deal, we'll be forced to negotiate a good deal. Thanks for watching.